also save quite a lot of money. If you cut your energy use and cut your greenhouse bills, it cuts your bills. It saves you money.
Len in Melbourne. Morning, Len.
Just a simple question. I've read the IPCC documents and I'd like the both speakers to tell me exactly what the logic is in the documents that proves that CO2 is causing global warming increases in temperature, because I couldn't find it.
Rupert?
Well, it's very simple that the amount of CO2 that goes up into the atmosphere traps the heat in the on the planet, and if we look at the long-term numbers for global temperatures, we've seen that they've gone up. It's very clear. Last year we know was that.
Well, he says he's read the report. It's not in there.
Is it just by inference?
No,
I want to know where the logic is. I've read all the chapters and I can't find the logic. I can read a lot of inferences, but I can't find the logic. If there are inferences, there are a variety of inferences that can be made depending on how you look at the information. Where is the chapter and the pages that actually proves the point?
If you look at the summary for policymakers, it's very clear that human activity is causing the rise in temperatures and that we need to do something about it. It's very clear. There's no doubt about it.
Yvonne in Warrnambool. Morning, Yvonne.
Good morning, John. I have two simple questions, actually. Apart from having Lord in front of his name, what qualifications does Lord Monkton have to speak on this apart from the rest of us? And secondly, an honest answer as to who is backing him to come to Australia, and it seems to me more politically talk about the ETS than the actual facts on climate change.
Lord Monkton.
Those are both very fair questions, madam. First of all, yes, I do have a very good competence in mathematics and in policy analysis. I used to advise Margaret Thatcher on this and other scientific questions. And secondly, as to who is funding me, actually it's the people who are coming to my meetings in the end who are funding me, but it was kindly underwritten by two retired engineers from Noosa who very kindly dug deep into their own not particularly generous superannuations so as to underwrite the tour.
Yvonne, satisfied?
I would like to know who's backing the two very poor people in
look, there was quite a write-up on them in the newspapers over the weekend, Yvonne. They're just two guys who got together and said they wanted to strike a blow. They've got certain political views, which you can obviously work out for yourself, and they thought the debate needed to be on a broader front.
Well, they have scientific views too.
Yeah.
Okay, then could I ask, I've just finished reading a book by 200 scientists in Queensland about the coral reefs, which are the forests of the deep, and they're quite separate from the IPCC, and I suggest Lord Monkton have a look at what's happening to the coral reefs and how they're blaming climate change.
All right, Yvonne, thank you. Lord Monkton, the reef.
Yes, certainly. The reef, in fact, according to a diver I happen to know who's been diving on that reef for 50 years, is doing just fine. What I can say is that a recent survey of the reef done independently and not by politicised scientists, but by a few scientists who actually know something about coral reefs, found that of the various species of coral first identified there by British marine biologists in 1928, all are there and all are thriving. You don't need to worry about the supposed acidification of the oceans. It can't actually happen. There are very powerful scientific
but temperatures can
why
rise.
It can't. Yes, but however, the Barrier Reef Authority has established that sea temperatures in the region of the reef have not changed at all over the last 30 years.
Rupert?
Well, it's simply not true. I mean, I'm more than happy to put you in touch with one of the reef scientists up on the Great Barrier Reef so that you can see what's going on. It's been it's been a number of years since I went diving along there to have a look at the impacts of climate change on there and the coral bleaching that's taking place. But I mean, I'd encourage you, Christopher, to spend some more time here in Australia and have a look at particularly the extreme temperatures that we're seeing here, the decreases in rainfall that we've seen,
rainfall shows no trend in the last 100 years here.
Yeah, I'd encourage you to talk to people who've lived in Melbourne and see what they think about the impacts of climate change here. Now, that's
the Meteorological Office's figures, your Meteorological Office's figures. I did study those
no,
before I came here.
I'm more than happy for you to talk to the Meteorological Association here about that. But if you spend any time here in Australia, whether it's by the Great Barrier Reef or if you go out into rural Victoria and have a look at the impacts of the drought, it will be very clear to you that we're starting to see some of those effects. And so to suggest that the Great Barrier Reef is not being affected by rising temperatures really shows that you haven't seen what's going on.
I have the figures from the Barrier Reef Authority. I have their chart. I've got it in my slides. I'll be showing it at the ballroom of the Sofitel Hotel at 5:30 in Melbourne today.
Yeah, well, it won't be supported by the people who work on the Great Barrier Reef.
I'm sorry, I've got their graph. It's no good trying to make stuff up. I've got the actual data from the Barrier Reef, the Marine Park Authority.
Christopher, what we do know with your graphs is that you do pick out bits of them, and
I've got the actual graph that they produce. It is unamended in any way. It's simply put up as a slide on my show. That's what I do with their graphs.
Okay, I simply don't agree with you there.
3 minutes till the news. In the time remaining, I've got a full board of calls. We could keep going pretty much forever, but I've got a question for each of you. There's more extreme weather events, Lord Monkton. More extreme weather events, whether we're talking about the winds that drove our bushfires a year ago this week, or whether we're talking about more tsunamis and earthquakes or so on, cyclones and the like. And climate scientists say that extreme weather events of any kind are part of their scenario. What's wrong with that theory?
Well, the first thing that's wrong with that is the UN itself has now rowed back rather vigorously in the last week on that, and it has said that all the data that suggested that there would be more droughts, floods or other extreme weather events as a result of global warming will have to be, and this is their phrase, re-evaluated.
But you still could have an increase in the
It is in fact
frequency.
settled science that outside the tropics you're likely to have fewer storm events. It is also settled science that over the last 100 years there has been no increase in typhoons and other such strong storms, and on any view, putting more CO2 in the atmosphere has absolutely no influence on the earthquakes you mentioned.
And Rupert, the continued claims of exaggeration, it would seem damaging the credibility of climate change advocates, and they're losing some momentum in the overall national and international appeal to people, ordinary people, to change the way they live their lives.
Look, I agree with you. I mean, if there's something in there that's not true, that doesn't enhance one's ability, except in some situations where it doesn't matter how much you put out and whether it's true or not. But the reality is that we are starting to see countries make very firm commitments to taking action on climate change, and we're not seeing people back away from that. So there is no doubt that the world understands that there needs to be action on climate change. Exactly how we do it, not everybody's sure yet, but there is no doubt that action is starting to happen, and we're not seeing countries moving away from taking action on climate change. And that's a good thing, because we will have a better economy, we will have better jobs, and we'll have a better planet if we take action in a sensible and a concerted way.
Well, in the meantime, at least we're able to have a debate about it, which at one stage, of course, there are arguments that we shouldn't even be debating this anymore. Do you think that was a mistake, tactically?
I don't think anyone said we shouldn't have a debate.
Well, plenty of people did. Plenty of people said that someone like Lord Monkton shouldn't be given the time of day. I've had text messages galore saying, why do you even have him on air? You're giving him credibility. He's a lunatic and all the rest of it.
Look, I think many of those comments are fairly accurate, but there's no reason why we can't have a discussion. But what I'd really be interested in having a discussion is, how do we ensure that Australia's economy can compete with China that is transforming? How do we ensure that we have the clean jobs of the future? How do we make sure that our businesses are as efficient as possible? Unfortunately, that's really the debate that we need to have.
Watch the nations just fading away from the Copenhagen process. Most of them haven't even complied with the most elementary of its provisions already. The fact is, the game is up. The science is in, the truth is out, the scare is over.